Alex Choy here, Harvard graduate, professional historian. Let's go for a walk. Ronald Reagan was born February 6, 1911, in Tampico, Illinois. He was a bright student with a variety of interests. He attended Eureka College, where he studied economics and sociology. While at the university, he acted in the school play and played for the high school football team. After graduating, he began his career in the entertainment industry when he went from being a sports radio announcer to a Hollywood actor. Over the next 2 decades, he acted in 53 films. He became the president of the Screen Actors Guild, which influenced his more conservative mindset because of multiple disputes over communism in the film industry. From here on, his views shifted from liberal to conservative. Back here, Alex Choy. Reagan was elected the governor of California in 1966 and was re-elected in 1970. Reagan was involved in high-profile conflicts with the protest movements of the era while governor. On May 15, 1969, during the People's Park protest, UC Berkeley, Reagan sent the California Highway Patrol and other officers to quell the protests. An incident that became known as Bloody Thursday resulted in the death of student James Rector and the blinding of carpenter Alan Blanchard. In 1980, Reagan won the Republican nomination for the presidency, and despite a close race up until a week before Election Day, Reagan won an overwhelming 49 of 50 states over Jimmy Carter. The country was sick of a big Democratic Party. On January 20th, 1981, Reagan came into office as the 40th President of the United States. He was shot 69 days after election and was back in office working several weeks later. His popularity soared, and the next election, he and Vice President George W. Bush were re-elected for the second term.
Reagan believed in the wisdom of the marketplace. He thought that all growth was built from the bottom up, not the government down. The less the government was involved in the country, the more prosperous the nation would become. To reach this goal, Reagan wanted heavy tax cuts and very reduced government spending on social services, shifting these responsibilities to the state governments. Although Reagan refers to this as New Federalism, many critics called it Hooverism. Reagan's campaign ran on the motto of peace through strength. Reagan, a realist, recognized that America needed to remain a large superpower in the world in order to try and maintain a world peace. To reach this goal, Reagan increased the nation's defensive spending by 43% in order to keep America safe and make the U.S. military a force for peace worldwide. This included more weapons, better equipment, and an improved intelligence program. Reagan became close with both British Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher as well as Pope John Paul II. They shared similar views on communism. Together, they worked to support the Solidarity movement, which made Poland a free nation. He also recognized the importance of being allies with their neighboring nations as he became close with both the Mexican and Canadian leaders.
Reaganomics. Reagan revolutionized the nation with his conservative ideas. The term Reaganomics was coined for his substantial reductions in government assistance and services, along with heavy tax cuts in the nation. Reagan believed that the poor economy was the result of excessive government growth and spending by previous presidents. Reagan believed that by increasing the wealth and power of the wealthiest people in society, this wealth could then indirectly benefit the poorer members of society, when the wealth and resources trickled down to them. Critics of this theory said that it was only meant to help the wealthy and had no way of helping the poor. When the recession of 1981 to 1982 hit, there was a record unemployment, bank failures, and farm foreclosures. Despite many critics blaming Reaganomics for these issues, Reagan pushed forward with his ideas. After World War II ended and Reagan became president, the United States and the Soviet Union emerged as powerful opposing forces. The Cold War was still continuing when Reagan was president, and in response to possible nuclear weapon use, Reagan created the Strategic Defense Initiative in March 1983. This was meant to develop an anti-ballistic missile system to prevent missile attacks from the Soviet Union. This initiative was a response to possible nuclear attacks from afar. Also known as Star Wars, it used lasers to intercept missiles while they were in the air. After investing $30 billion into the program, the SDI was forced to be set aside because it interfered with SALT talks with the Soviet Union and could possibly end any future peace. Also, the U.S. was afraid of the Soviet retaliation. Reagan formed a good relationship with the Soviet leader Gorbachev during the summit meetings. Reagan spoke at the Berlin Wall, which was a symbol of communism, and challenged Gorbachev to tear down the wall. 29 months later, the people of Berlin dismantled the wall, and Reagan returned to participate in taking down the wall. This led to the end of the Soviet Union's control of East Germany and eventually a peaceful resolution to the Cold War. Reagan and Gorbachev agreed that neither of them had won the war. Instead, the whole world had won. Eventually, the Soviet Union itself collapsed.
Reagan's policies led to free democratic elections held in Korea, Brazil, Argentina, Uruguay, Bolivia, Guatemala, El Salvador, Honduras, and the Philippines. In Latin America, there were 3 times as many people that lived under freely elected governments. Overall, Reagan's push for democracy worldwide can undeniably be seen as a success. The Contras were an insurgent group in Nicaragua who battled Cuban-backed communists. Reagan believed that they were the moral equivalent of our founding fathers. Because of the Reagan Doctrine, the CIA was supposed to train and assist these anti-communist insurgencies. However, Congress was stubborn and refused to allow support, so in order to supply money to the Contras, Reagan sent money to Iran to release hostages and secretly sent some of the money to the Contras. This led to an 8-year investigation and 14 people were charged for the scandal. Although Reagan's image suffered, he quickly rebounded.
Margaret Thatcher once said that Reagan had achieved the most difficult of all political tasks, changing attitudes and perceptions about what is possible. From the strong fortress of his convictions, he set out to enlarge freedom, the world over at a time when freedom was in retreat, and he succeeded. Because of his presidency, Reagan expanded the reach of democracy and free market ideologies.
The public opinion views Reagan's political ideas most similar to Hoover's. The public opinion's view of Reagan during the recession of 1981 through 1982 is very similar to how the public viewed Hoover. Hoover was blamed for the economic crash of the Great Depression, and people named homeless areas after him, called Hoovervilles. Although Reagan's approval rating never dropped as far as Hoover's did, he was not well liked during the recession, and Reaganomics was blamed for the economic recession.
Although Reagan caused the largest period of peacetime and economic growth, he also caused the record growth of the national debt as well as the federal budget and trade deficit. Because of this, many people argue over whether or not Reaganomics was actually helpful for the nation. Other than the Iran-Contra scandal, Reagan had no other scandals. The public viewed him as an incredible president, and by the time he left the office in 1989, he had higher ratings than any other president since Franklin D. Roosevelt.